In a world surrounded by franchises, reboots, and shared universes, an elite team of podcasters will risk body and soul to investigate the depths of intellectual properties, one multiverse, subgenre, and trend at a time. Who are we? We're the IP Squad. Welcome back to the IP Squad, our ongoing investigation into films based on pulp and comic strip heroes. I'm John Campbell. My partners for this investigation, oh boy, they're the Crockett and Tubbs of the IP Squad. We call them the Jones boys around here, and I just got off the phone with the mayor, and you two idiots wrecked half the city!
Let me tell you something, Captain.
Look, if we're
You
the
know, I
Crockett and
know that
Tubbs,
the mayor said something nice about Specs over here with his book learning.
I'm not
But
entirely
I'm from
sure
the streets.
which one I would be.
Oh, I think you're the Tubbs. I think you're the because Crockett's more the loose cannon.
That's true, but I can't picture Robin with a pet alligator.
I got the boat.
Elvis, yeah. But
and
you know what?
And a pet crocodile named Elvis.
Yeah,
I've got a.
I got the boat.
Yeah, he's got
I
the
don't
boat. But
really
you know what?
have-
Robin does look better with the rolled up suit jacket sleeves. I'm sorry, it's just true. We know this.
If you saw me back in the day, you'd know that was true.
Small note: my dad, my parents got married in 1986. My father's tuxedo was from the Miami Vice collection. It was all white, pristine white shirt, white bow tie, just total white.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you look at my parents' wedding photos, and it is very much 1986. There is no doubt. Yeah, my dad
John,
dressed like Don Johnson.
are you saying it's as white as the cocaine they use to get through the ceremony? Is that what you're saying?
I've never heard anything confirmed about it. Let's talk about
a real American hero.
A real American hero. G.I. Joe?
Joe.
We were watching the G.I. Joe movie?
Crap! Did I watch the wrong?
Oh, God. Yeah, once again. By the way, stay tuned for future seasons. There's no way we're not doing a Transformers G.I. Joe season on IP Squad.
My goodness.
That's a given, obviously.
Every episode's title will be Wither Micronauts.
Man, when are we going to get that Micronauts movie? Or a Mask movie?
It's gonna happen.
It's going to happen. Rom. I mean, they put together that writing staff for the shared Hasbro universe. Anyway, what we're talking about here, though, was also something that's kind of been postulated as a future IP Squad season, a franchise non-starter, if you will.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
This was definitely meant to kick off a big wave of movies.
Well, the whole thing. This is still the after effects of Superman the movie.
Oh, and a lot of mistakes made in this were attempting to recreate things that worked about Superman the movie.
But pretty much the last couple of weeks, I don't know what's going on with my voice. Apologies.
You're very emotional.
It's that mid-50s puberty that they don't tell you about.
Yeah, they don't tell you anything about it.
Yeah.
I'm
They call it
Menopause.
second
Are
puberty.
you going through menopause right now?
Yeah, I'm growing hair in my ears. No,
So, you can feel that, right? Like there's
yes, but what I was saying is the last couple weeks of our show have been that too, where basically IP became, they were grabbing at it. Like, what can we give these people? They apparently liked Superman, so there are other comic strip characters or this or that.
They'll buy anything we shove down their throats.
Well, and it really does feel like a mad scramble as opposed to anybody putting like real thought into, oh, this would be an interesting thing, or what's the thing. It's more just like everybody's going, Jesus, what do we got? What do we own? Do we own anything?
The interesting thing about Lone Ranger here is that
Because I don't think we've actually said we're talking about 1981's The Legend of the Lone Ranger.
Legend of the Lone Ranger.
Oh, yeah.
What's interesting about us doing it is he didn't originate in pulp or comic strips.
Yeah.
But that said,
but he's started in radio, right?
It will,
Yes.
It'll be similar to if we cover The Shadow.
We will, yeah.
You're looking at somebody created for radio.
Yeah. We're not being very specific about that.
The character started in radio, but didn't get a character until the pulps.
Yeah.
So
there's a few characters here who kind of blur that line, especially a lot of radio characters, the like crossover from radio to pulp to comic strip, they kind of all bleed together. Right. Even if they started in radio, they pretty quickly became pulps or comic strips, and so
in this case, the Lone Ranger, yay, I'm Mr. History Guy, 1933.
Go ahead, Specs.
He was created by local radio in Detroit. I think it's awesome to think that the Lone Ranger came straight out of Detroit.
Yeah,
it's RoboCop and it's Lone Ranger, baby.
It was George Trindle, who was the station manager of I can look up the call.
Brendan, that's that's more research than we're used to on this show.
WXYZ.
Ooh, WXY. Okay, that's actually pretty good.
But George Trindle was the station owner, and Fran Stryker was a writer for it, and it's debated who actually came up with the concept. So they always get sort of co-credit. But
what if a cowboy had a mask?
That's pretty much it.
Not a bad idea.
Even though I don't think they ever admitted as much, the whole concept of the masked lawman with the ethnic minority sidekick.
Yeah, we're gonna have to tiptoe around Tonto on this episode.
Yeah.
But I
tiptoe around Tonto is my third favorite Tiny Tim.
Tiptoe around the Tonto.
All right, it was just an excuse to impressions. No.
There you go. So I think they probably did just say, "Can we do something that's Zorro but for America?"
I mean, the like Zorro to Lone Ranger to Batman line is pretty clear there, right?
And
right.
You can keep going back to Scarlet Pimpernel. Basically, the idea of secret identity, good guy, and then Robin Hood.
Yeah,
secret identity, good guy.
Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah. Except for Count of Monte Cristo is just about revenge, essentially.
Dude.
It's not like,
but it's a rich guy. It's a dark rich guy who's got justice
essentially
plans.
Someone who is breaking the law in order to be good, to help people, which is like, what a great dichotomy. So, but the Old West was always going to be, and especially in the 30s, it was the 20s and 30s, it was in the cachet.
Yes.
And kept going. The 50s, it
well, I mean, that's the thing is Lone Ranger just exploded. I mean, of course, I think a lot of people, like my father's generation, is the TV show obviously was the Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger starts, as local, goes national as a radio show, and Fran Stryker did start writing novels, pulps.
Yeah.
So the Lone Ranger, but
we're calling him an honorary pulp character.
He is.
Yeah.
And what's interesting though is that in the case of I would say that in the case of Zorro, I would say Tyrone Power, not our original guy, Mr. Fairbanks, but I'd say Tyrone Power became the template as far as the look, that thing.
Oh, definitely.
And then obviously Guy Williams takes it farther,
Yes.
thanks to the TV show. And I think that Clayton Moore, as Lone Ranger for the TV show, that was the template from that point on, because if you look at the pulps of the Lone Ranger, and he was on the covers and so forth, and was even in comic books, he was a cowboy. He had like a red shirt on sometimes, like a vest, and he would wear like goofy 10-gallon hat and a mask, and you're like going, whoa, that doesn't look anything like.
Because this movie, he's dressed like Clayton Moore. I mean, no question. The powder blue, the white hat, Yeah,
in this case, they've made it more gray, which actually I think it's a good look. The only thing I'll say about this movie is man, that looks cool.
Yeah.
As Lone Ranger. But Clayton Moore becomes the ideal, which becomes essentially what we think of. It's superhero almost, where he has a uniform, and the uniform is this white hat and this sort of tight-fitting, because Texas Rangers didn't dress like that. But anyway.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
John.
Oh no.
But essentially, he's a character created for radio that just caught on, and also because those two guys are like, dude, just a few years later, they're like, let's do it again. But let's move stuff up to the modern day, because we could do like a gangbuster type show with a shadow type guy,
a Dick Tracy, but it's
a Dick Tracy guy, and then Green Hornet, and then they create something that I'm sure Philip Jose Farmer's head exploded as a young boy. It's like, they're related?
Yeah.
It's like, Lone Ranger is Green Hornet's great uncle.
That is one of my favorite like comic booky kind of nerdy continuity, the idea of that, where you're just like, it's so unnecessary but so appreciated.
When you have his brother Dan Sr. saying like, oh, you ought to meet your nephew Dan, he's awesome, and he's like going, and I'm like, oh, he will go on to Father Britt Reed.
Brendan, you remember that there were action figures in the 70s? This would be before the movie, but you get Lone Ranger, Tonto, and also Dan. The nephew.
My favorite character is and also Dan, and has always been and also Dan, and also Dan, now including Dan.
The idea
and the
company made those figures in the early 70s, and we had a Lone Ranger, and then cut to 1981 when this movie comes out, and yes, I ended up with the movie specific little guy action figure.
Although as we were talking about, the 3 3/4 in the tie, but we're also post Star Wars.
They all stand bow-legged because they were built so they could sit on their horses.
God, I had a Zorro figure like that too, where I'm like, I sure wish he could duel with people though.
Yeah.
Instead of just standing like this. No, we were talking about
of yourself, by the way.
Oh, that's what I sounded like. That's like a 6-year-old boy. I sure do love Zorro. I really did. And
but
still
anyway,
do.
I mean,
we were talking about
the history.
Kind of a weirder history than some of the other ones we've had in terms of the, it sort of evolved across mediums. So in some ways, it being a multimedia thing, starts from the beginning almost, right?
And thanks to the beauty of television and reruns and syndication, that's our dad's generation is watching Clayton Moore,
right?
But then we ended up watching the same things, and I loved the Lone Ranger show. I loved Clayton Moore because
Clayton
talk
Moore,
about an Adam West type person, where you can smell the earnestness and still
but he's also
have a wink, still have a warmth,
playful
to him.
enough that he's great as the old prospector or the Southern gentleman.
Yes, because the whole thing about Lone Ranger with all the disguises, Master Disguise.
Yeah.
Oh,
I also, even into the 90s, they were still showing those, and I would watch those. And loved it in the same, much in the same way I would watch the Batman.
And I liked the Filmation cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, there was something very cool.
William Conrad was the voice of the Lone Ranger in the
great choice. Great choice.
One of the great voices.
Yeah, and just if you need hero guy. Yeah, if you need hero guy, you get William Conrad. I mean, that's just perfect.
Yes, you do.
Barrel-tested William Conrad.
Yeah, exactly. That's a two-fisted action hero voice.
Just as long as you don't need to see me. Your hero.
When you see him, it is it's like, you know what, we're gonna get our Ness.
I love about radio days when you see their action hero radio show, and it's Wallace Shawn.
Radio Days is such a good movie. And that's the thing. It's like it's interesting because I grew up post this movie even, but the Lone Ranger was still in the lexicon because I had the cap, gun, and mask set, and and it's so interesting that it was and I had I was a weird kid once again. There's a reason I do this show, but I had a photo on my wall of Clayton Moore That's the Lone Ranger with his silver pistols. And I just think about that. I'm like, it's so weird. Even in the 90s, it was still like that. He was still an omnipresent pop culture thing. Yeah.
Did you spend your days memorizing the Lone Ranger oath?
You know, I did not. That was that had maybe
It's a long. It's very long.
It's
very long.
It's very long. It's like the national anthem.
And it didn't end up in this movie. Let's talk about.
Let's talk about 1981.
Oh yeah, and I just want to announce to all of our loyal viewers, this is a spinoff pilot, Horsing Around with Horse, and we're going to be talking about Michael Horse.
Michael Horse, man.
And by the way, Michael Horse doesn't rest until he rests on a Casper mattress, guys. Yes.
This episode of Spills Burying the Tea.
Well, much like this movie, the first and last episode of Spills Burying the Tea. Because, let's talk about 1980. Yeah, 1981's The Lone Ranger, Legend of the Lone Ranger. And
please get it right.
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's key here. This isn't the Lone Ranger.
So many people died to bring you this.
This is the Legend of the Lone Ranger, which totally made in the post Superman, as we're talking about the like. Oh my God, okay. It's kind of where we are now with like my generation was again, where it's like suddenly the people are going, what did we love as kids? Superman, Flash Gordon, the Lone Ranger. You know, it's like all it's all
Bumblebee,
Power Rangers. We got to get a bit. You know, yeah. Actually, I kind of like that Power Rangers movie that was out a couple years ago, but it was not bad.
You're allowed.
It was not bad.
Okay.
But no, it is. It is.
We're talking to a couple of Power Ranger agnostics.
Yeah, no, that's Power Rangers is a real example of you had to be there, and you had to be 5. You know,
Not saying that I can't take a villain named Rita Repulsa seriously.
I was more of a Lord Zed guy, honestly. If I'm talking about,
okay, you seem it.
More of a Lord, and then when they got married and became a duo. Anyway, but yeah, so. The whole impetus of this movie, reading all the producers, because I went in and read all the Wikipedia stuff, and everything about this was like, no, man, that was the past. Okay,
right.
This is going to be a Lone Ranger for the 80s. You're not going to be laughing at this, all right? This is not going to be goofy. Right. You're going to take this shit seriously. Right. And I love reading all that and then watching this movie.
The people who owned the rights, who said that, were themselves. They bought the rights in the 50s.
Yeah.
Like they
they weren't the new.
When they first started working on it.
They weren't the new shepherds of it, really.
Who bought the rights? Bonita Granville was a star, a kid actor of the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah.
I think she was filmed Nancy Drew. In the 30s or 40s.
Boy, I only know I've never seen any of those in their entirety.
Yeah, well, that's not that good.
I was gonna say, I feel like I can live with that. Yeah. No,
I'm not sure we've ever gotten a really good Nancy Drew.
And it's
no offense to Pamela Sue Anderson.
The best.
Pamela Sue Martin, you mean?
Pamela Sue
Martin, thank you.
The best live action Nancy Drew we've had is Veronica Mars.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's one of those. 100%. It's like The Incredibles being the best Fantastic Four movie. It's like the thing inspired by the thing is the best version of it.
Yeah. Good
this
is what I'll say about their this ain't going to be anything jokey.
Yeah, well they're like when he puts on the mask, you're gonna believe it.
Yeah.
Well,
you believe it's a mask.
Yeah, you're going to believe that that's a mask on a man's face. So it's not quite the same as you'll believe a man can fly. But, you'll believe a man can put.
You'll believe a man can shoot a silver bullet
over a part of his face.
Yep.
So the thing with this is, I think there are plenty of places this movie goes wrong, and like you said last night, John, the choices you sit there going, what?
Well, because the choices contradict each other is one of the big problems.
They often do. I think there's a difference between earnestness and deadly serious.
Oh,
and
yes.
This decided to go deadly serious, which was the big mistake. Because even Clayton Moore's show, which was never campy.
No.
Like we said before, it had a warmth and a humanity to it. Even while you have the straightest arrow of good guys.
I think think something
he doesn't even shoot to kill.
No, I think something we respond to in a lot of stuff. All three of us talk about liking stuff that is, and I think Marvel does a good job with this now. Stuff that's larger than life. That doesn't mean you don't take it seriously. You do take it seriously. The stakes are real, but it's grand.
I think
it's,
the way that Marvel handled, and this goes across all the films, but the way they handled Captain America, which was going to be always the trick, they threaded that needle perfectly. Because he never, at any point, do you not feel he is that man who has that idealism. You always buy it. However, he's also a human. And so he's awkward at times. And
funny.
He's funny. He's self-aware. And it's like, great. Do that with Lone Ranger. And because this movie, as I think Siskel and Ebert, because I read what they had to say about it.
They savaged this thing.
Except,
but they're right on.
But at the same time, they were saying what we're saying, which is, what a missed opportunity. And essentially, there's no humor in the world of the Lone Ranger. There's nothing there, and that this movie has no joy.
Well, that's the thing.
It doesn't matter how many times they pull out the William Tell overture. There's no joy in this movie.
Because once again, it's much like the same with the Merle Haggard ballad and the William Tell overture. They now don't fit. It's so weird. Every time they bust that out, what should be the Lone Ranger theme of the William, when he gets on Silver, and you're like, fuck. Even when he says "Hi-yo, Silver away," I'm like, that's weird that this guy would say that. Like, he's just so serious. This guy doesn't seem like he would put on the mask, actually.
It's also weird that he didn't say that. Someone in a booth said that.
Well,
Mr. Keith.
Well, all right. Yeah. We got to back up because we got to talk about what is certainly
the biggest elephant in the room.
Yeah, it's certainly. I'm not sure if it's objectively the biggest sin of the movie, but it's certainly pop culture remembered as the biggest mistake this movie made, right?
Yeah. They were trying to find their own Sam Jones, and it made me miss Sam Jones, who's not a great actor by any means.
But Sam Jones,
Flash Gordon, with his voice dubbed, there is involvement, engagement. And a certain personality that comes through, even if it's not his voice.
Even if it's not his voice, he actually does play an ability to be earnest in a fun way.
This guy is a mannequin.
And that
can
from the sound,
smile.
From the sound of it, they cast him as cast him like a mannequin. The
idea that they cast somebody with wide eyes because that's the only way the mask would work.
And you're just like. And
really,
did you? I was saying this to you last night, Brendan. We were talking about this, where I was just going like, they're just going like, we put on the mask and he looked right, and we're just like, did you have him read lines then too? I don't know. It seems like there should be more than just putting the mask on.
Although
in interviews Collins and Bruce Boxleitner were also up for it, and you're like going, those guys aren't going to win any Oscars and never did. But one of them's going to become very problematic.
Well, yeah,
regardless,
that's why I go like Boxleitner.
You have a couple of guys who, at that time, are much better actors
and play
and are handsome.
And we know, especially going forward, and actually Collins at that point already, because he had done Star Trek: The Motion Picture, we know can play that old timey earnestness. Can be hero guy, because hero guy is hard.
Have joy and have engagement.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, the problem with the dubbing is that they pick somebody that is very earnest in their acting. If you see James Keach in films or TV, he's a very good actor.
Good actor. And they totally cast him because he does have that rich baritone sort of voice.
But again, the tone that they chose for these, you know, who looks like they're having the time of their life? Jason Robards.
That guy's having fun.
He's having a great time.
And he's working, a third of the rest of the cast or whatever.
And Christopher Lloyd is not having the time of his life. Christopher Lloyd is he's a get.
Big note.
I thought that his take on what they gave him was fine. I like.
Wish there was more.
His voice is in a subtle,
I wish there was.
What blows my mind about this is of all the mistakes, and there are plenty.
Yeah.
One of them is just pacing and the way they structured it. I love an origin story. I can't get enough. And
of course.
But at the same time, I'm sitting there going like, you put so much weight at the beginning of his tale up to him becoming the Lone Ranger. Once he becomes the Lone Ranger, we are so far into the movie that they try to shove all the fun action adventure stuff into the end. And you realize, and I realized it last night, I haven't watched this in years.
Yeah.
You realize that there's very little interaction between Lone Ranger and Tonto as far as like talking,
none.
just like
almost
interacting.
None. No,
he is never shown planning, or he just shows up, and it's the whole thing like, okay, that was Cavendish's plan, and they give Tonto one line, which is a pretty good line, which is like, I just want to know before we go into this, are you going to save the president, or are you just going after Cavendish for revenge? That's good, but maybe we could have expanded. Maybe there should have been more weight given to that
guys,
part
we're
of the
coming
movie.
close to where my hot take is.
All right.
I hope you're ready.
Wait, I can feel it. My hands are getting warm as we're approaching.
Yeah.
There's a hot take around here somewhere.
A hot take from the guy from the streets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here it is, fellas.
All right.
Okay.
The Army Hammer movie works a lot better.
You know what?
Even given
absolutely
that Johnny Depp
does.
is about as much of a Native American as I am,
and
it works. I would say every time they kick in the Lone Ranger theme, it's usually during huge action beats that they are killing with.
That movie has almost the opposite problem of this movie.
I cannot address that
because you haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it.
Yeah. No.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I couldn't bring myself, Robin. I couldn't bring myself.
I
to
saw
watch
it.
That.
I will say that movie.
From the trailers, I was like, oh. God.
The last half hour of that movie rules. Legit
it's
rules.
Incredible.
The final action climax, fucking amazing.
Oh my God!
Incredible. The rest of the movie, we'll get there. That's a future episode. But no, I really, I wish that movie was better because there was a lot of good in there.
It's again so wrong in so many ways.
Yeah. But different ways than this.
They don't go wrong is they have a better tone in general.
Yes.
And they have a great sense of action.
They hired that had
everybody who's doing it got the assignment for the most part. Everybody in the movie understood what they were trying to do.
Helena Bonham Carter might have gotten it too much. I
cannot address
the thing. The thing I'll say this is yes. It's interesting. You look at who made this movie because I do think as you bring up the Armie Hammer one, that was made by the Pirates people, which for better or worse there are sins there, but fun adventure filmmakers. This is made by a guy who was primarily a cinematographer, and they were impressed by his work directing the movie Monty Walsh.
Which is one of the great elegiac, if I'm pronouncing that word correctly.
It's a great movie.
Westerns from the late 60s, early 70s.
It's a great movie.
End of the West kind of movie.
In that wild bunch.
This guy's a good director. So I mean maybe he
but
successfully
the thing that's
he is a very good cinematographer. You look at that
well he didn't really, and this ended him as a film director.
He never directed shot.
Well, you have Laszlo Kovacs shooting it too. It's just
and they're
the fucking best.
A lot of gauzy trying to. They really are pushing this as being
a myth.
But
this is basically like them doing Excalibur, but for America.
Right.
Okay, and I love them taking the character that seriously. The problem is it doesn't work story-wise.
My point about bringing up that he had done Monty Walsh is, very serious. Very much about, the death of the West. I don't know why that. Then they're going like, well, we loved his work on that, so we knew he'd be perfect for Lone Ranger. Like, I don't see that at all. Other than both are set in roughly the same time period. Not at all does anything about that guy's directing and what he'd done up to this point make it seem like fun movie. That is, it had toys, so presumably this is at least somewhat aimed at children. I think this was meant to be an all ages, bring the whole family to the Lone Ranger.
Although there's a lot of salty language and it's funny how much
blood.
Moments that I had forgotten because again, hadn't seen in a long time, where I was like going, I was like, whoa, this thing is not balanced well, because it is trying to be your stalwart Lone Ranger movie, and they're like going, oh, piss on Grant. I wish I could piss on that guy. He's a drunk and a bastard.
Okay, that leads me to
end, you know, they are allowing Grant to be kind of what he was like. I do love the idea that
I kind of want to
into the last half hour of this movie. It's not just saving the president. It is a rogues gallery of the greatest Western characters.
That's so
like, wow, they're all on the same train.
It's like a Bob Hope, like alias Jesse James. You know, the alias Jesse James. Every Western star from a Warner Brothers TV Western show shows up to help Bob Hope out. And then they also pan, and finally Bing Crosby's there too. Was Brett Maverick not picking up the phone the day they shot Legend of the Lone Ranger?
James Garner was like, "Let it ring." But Jack Kelly actually called them. Is what's the lesson. Shots fired at Jack Kelly.
Shots fired at Jack Kelly.
As I've maybe stated.
The Jack Kelly story.
I distinctly remember watching a lot of reruns of Maverick. But when I would tune in and it was a Jack Kelly episode, though, I was like, I think we can find something else.
But did you stick around for any of the Bo Maverick episodes?
Brendan, I think you know my love of one Sir Roger Moore, so you know that. I am a Roger Moore.
That's the part you can watch is when he meets his cousin at the dock.
No, I'm a huge Roger Moore guy, so of course I watch those. I love Roger Moore.
I was very confused in those episodes whenever a circular halo would appear above his head. I was just like, what?
Is he also the saint in this too? Weird. I don't
understand how that works.
I kind of love that. No. When you bring up the salty language, though, that reminds me. Great show, by the way. Everybody just go watch The Saint. Fucking amazing show. The salty language thing reminds me of when I first how I first saw this movie, which is and I feel like this is the way to see this movie, by the way, is a VHS copy from the library. Because when I'm a kid, this movie is bombed so much that it's basically forgotten by history. So I come across this I was a kid, once again, surprise, surprise. I was a kid who just devoured the movie section at the library, whatever tapes they had. And I'm like, there's a Lone Ranger movie? Oh my God.
And John was watching scenes of marriage from marriage, and he was just like, I mean, I don't get this.
Kind of. That's truer than you think, because I would just take stuff out.
Scenes from a marriage.
I wasn't actually watching. Maybe not scenes from a marriage.
Winston checks in. Yeah. Scenes from a marriage.
Well, it wasn't scenes from a marriage, but because the library had it was all just movies alphabetical. So I did check out stuff that was definitely beyond my age range.
You went for scenes from a marriage because the sorrow and the pity had been checked out.
But there was a lot of
you only have volumes 1 and 2 of Showa?
Yeah. It wasn't quite to that extent, but yes, I was watching finding art house or foreign stuff as a kid and being like, because especially as a kid, anything where a guy had a gun on the cover, right? So I ended up watching like Godard movies and stuff and being like, that kind, because you're like, it looks like an action-y movie. But I checked this out. By the way, my father's no was you don't want to watch that. And also, and his whole memory of it was, isn't that the one where they dubbed that guy's voice? No, he knew the press of it, right? He just knew didn't they dub that guy's voice? That was the whole thing. But
they shot themselves in the foot a lot when they released this
horrible
movie.
Press. Horrible press coming into this.
Press. And apparently Clinton Spilsbury, according to Christopher Lloyd, was also a real asshole.
That's like one of my
movie star.
He came in, but the thing I was going to say, just my anecdote about the salty language thing is because it's a public library. On the back of the thing it says, it has the description and the rating. It says PG, and someone had written in Sharpie -13 bad language. A library patron chose to re-rate the movie because they were offended by the language in this film. which is still that's burned into my memory of that VHS.
Somebody needs to burn Grandma's library card. Is what I say.
I'll fix this. I'll fix this. Well, this would have been PG-13.
If I wanted to see a porno film, I would I would put on my raincoat and go to the Pussycat Lounge. I think is that still open?
Is it still a thing? I don't know.
Is that still run by Mrs. Reynolds? My old friend Mrs. Reynolds.
Mrs. Williams.
The thing about this, of course, is this movie. This movie definitely would have been a PG-13 had that existed, of course. Because the other thing I was surprised by, not just the salty language, but the bloodshed that's here and there. When the Rangers get massacred, it's pretty bloody for like.
It's a Peckinpah movie.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked.
And also, just overdone. I think they were like,
those guys really get murdered. They really get murdered.
They get crazy murdered. There's a wagon full of explosives to close off the canyon, and then they just pick them off like fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is Bryant's Gap. That is how the Rangers get it.
Of course.
But it's just Butch and his men are up on the rise. It's not even a Judas figure. The inclusion of the Judas figure is kind of interesting. That's good.
I think that's a good note in the script.
Pop. They kill him from up on the ridge.
Right.
Yeah.
And they follow the beats. But for the movie, they're like, we got to really kill him.
I mean, you've got him.
Kill him.
You've got him holding his brother, who's saying his last words with blood coming out.
Yeah,
I love you. You got it, John. And you're like, Jesus Christ.
And he's like, no.
All of a sudden, I am seeing this is made by the guy who made Monty Walsh.
Well, yeah, I was thinking because you said that was not probably the best director to pick for this.
Yeah.
I was like, there probably wasn't that many. Directors. The best they could have hoped for is to find somebody like Richard Donner who loved the material so much that kind of joy and open-hearted embracing of the character and the stories would have carried it through.
Honestly, even Mike Hodges or Robert Altman, weirdly, the guys who you wouldn't think it, but did totally embrace that.
Or a young John Landis.
Well, actually, John Landis would have actually been perfect for this. He would have been fantastic for this.
Quasi-serious. He never really did anything heroic.
I mean, Three Amigos has its moments.
But the thing
is, the look of Three Amigos really would have worked for this.
With action sequences and the lightness.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling, obviously, he would have found those moments, even with that script. What
well,
blows my mind is finding out that one of the drafts was by George MacDonald Fraser.
Yes, Flash
it's like
Man.
The man who and they're like, I can't even imagine how good that would have been because he's the guy who did the Flashman books and is like the
Four Musketeers.
Did you
like a next generation pulp writer?
Is that I think there's a quote on the Wikipedia. Is that Larry McMurtry who talks about? I read it and it's great. He goes, that script was fantastic.
But I will say this one, like I said, too deadly serious instead of earnest, and I do appreciate that it is so faithful following the storyline, except for Butch Cavendish is very different in this movie, and I'm okay with it because we get Christopher Lloyd.
But I wish they had
making him a Lex Luthor type, like an actual, like super villain, where in the
but Cavendish,
he's just like, I don't like that Lone Ranger. He's just a
I told Robin Brendan that just get ready for what Bill Fichtner does as Cavendish in that Army because he is all in on that version that you just described. But
and the weird magic stuff that they include in
there's a lot of weird stuff for that future. There's a lot of weird stuff for that future movie. But the thing I was gonna say, but the Cavendish, I also like the idea of the character. But it's like this whole movie. It's so undercooked. There's not enough of him.
Well, it's also just shoved in.
There's not enough of him. And then yes, because you're like, well, I get this guy's like bad, right? Because he's a murderer and stuff. But you don't get his
talking about him. And it's like, oh, it's the.
But you don't get. Well, that's another thing where once again it's like we want to rebuild him as this sort of erudite supervillain, but we also want him to be this outlaw that everybody's like, oh, it's the Cavendish boys. But then you're like, but then the guy we see at the end doesn't match.
We realize he wants to form his own country,
which I like as a plot.
Yeah,
but it comes out of nowhere.
It comes out
right.
Of nowhere.
It does. They didn't put a lot of time in it. Basically they've turned Butch Cavendish into a villain in an episode of the Wild Wild West.
Very much so. Very much so.
And so, which is okay, but again, to John's point, they don't get there quickly enough. I remember, I think it's in that Wikipedia thing where Lou Grade, Lord Lou Lord, says that the problem in his mind with the movie was they focused too much on the legend and not much on the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
In other words, it takes so long for him to get to be the Lone Ranger that you've only got 15, 20 minutes left of the movie.
And what was the point of, other than to reassure us that he's heterosexual? If you don't pay off...
That was a big question.
They completely abandon the romance.
They do the slightly Zorro-esque thing. Slightly, it's totally ripped off, but it was like him posing as the Padre to just basically say, I was worried about you, you should have gone to San Francisco, and then she's like, oh, I think that you're... It's like, bye. We just don't see her ever.
We never see the character again after that.
We talked a lot about James Keach dubbing Clinton Spilsbury, but we don't mention at all that the woman was dubbed by Andy McDowell, and that's ironic because well,
I will say
he mustn't really know.
Clinton Spilsbury is dubbed by a different actor, obviously, but the dubbing in this movie is rampant. There is so much ADR in this movie. It's crazy. It's omnipresent because I'm going waiting for, and actually. The Keach, it's not terrible from a technical standpoint, the dubbing. It actually works better than I had remembered it. But weirdly, the people dubbing themselves in a lot of places felt weird.
I think
it made me wonder if they didn't have sound equipment. They shot the whole MOS.
It kind of feels like that. It feels like a spaghetti western.
That they were going to be, ADRing their main character. Maybe they're like, well, we have to keep the sound consistent. So why not ADR the whole movie?
Did you see that? There's a quote from James Keach that I love where he says,
he's like, I thought he did pretty good.
I thought he did all right, but then he goes, but I was happy to take the money too. I love that. Just goes like,
the money was good.
I thought, oh, give this guy another chance. But if you're gonna pay me anyway, I guess I can dub this.
Yeah.
I love it. What an actor.
Mr. Lloyd thought they kind of that it was a little shitty the way they treated him, but at the same time he thought it was a little shitty the way the guy basically was like. Took the example of George Lazenby.
Oh, I very much
like that.
It's his casting is very lazy. Talk about another guy who was cast because he looked right.
Lazenby fit the suit.
He fit the suit. I am still as a Bond fan, I am still I think Lazenby could have gotten better. Maybe
I agree.
Unlike Clinton Spilsbury, there are moments where you're like, "Ooh, there's the beginning of something here." I think he's very nervous. I think he's hesitant to make a lot of big swings because he's still trying to kind of play Connery's Bond. I think he could have gotten another shot. Spilsbury though, there's no point in this movie where I go like, "Ooh, there's a kernel of a guy who maybe could have done no." He's
did you guys
dull as dirt.
Read his Wikipedia entry for Clinton Spilsbury?
Oh yeah.
He was dealing with a lot, John.
He had a lot going on. You talk about that crazy Andy Warhol interview he did?
Yeah.
Oh, Brendan? Do you know about this?
That?
No.
He gave it's bad news when Andy Warhol is like, he was pretty drunk and seemed very messed up.
He overshared.
when Andy Warhol thinks you've taken it too far.
Was it something for like Interview Magazine?
Yeah. And it was right around when this movie came out. It was pretty, it wasn't like.
Well, that's the only time anyone would ever want to talk.
Right? Yeah, it's not like an after the fact thing where he's looking back. But
no, I didn't look up his Wikipedia. Did he end up like selling cars or something? What
he
was
went.
the,
he went
He's
back.
a photographer.
He was
Los Angeles.
he was a
No,
photographer.
that was what he was.
No, he
What
went
did
back
he
to.
end up-
He went back
He
to.
went back to-
photography.
Oh, he just went back to being a photographer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although I did
I mean,
see
I don't wish the guy ill, but boy, he was not your guy.
from the sound of it, though, as much as maybe he didn't have the talent to back it up, it does sound like his attitude also ran him out of the business. So that's the thing where it's like he did kind of do it to himself. Because everyone there are multiple people I read reactions to talk about he came in going, I'm the star of this movie. All right. They've plucked me. It's Spilsbury's time, baby. And
he basically was a diva without having earned it.
And so it is sort of and then he's shit in the movie. So why would anyone give him a second chance? That's the thing. We're sort of this is his first and only major acting role. He had done, a couple of bit TV parts.
Was that Lazenby was a sweetheart on set.
Yeah.
And he would occasionally joke, you'd never make the other fella do this.
Yeah.
But to the point that they include it in the movie. But the big thing that happened to him was he had got really bad advice from his management team once the film was about to be released. Where he tried to get out of the contract and he grew a full hippie beard and he wanted,
because they told him, dude, Bond's over, man.
Yeah. And
great documentary I recommend about him.
Oh God, terrific. Cannot recommend that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, great documentary.
Yeah.
Waiting for that Spilsbury documentary though.
Spilsbury goes into this being a dick.
Yeah.
And then when he goes on a publicity tour with Andy Warhol, of all people, he's drunk. He starts alluding to affairs he's had with Dennis Christopher and Bud Cort.
Yep.
Wow.
And I just think Spilsbury was dealing with a lot, and the being cast the lead in the movie was the worst thing that could have happened to him.
It does sound like he was a troubled man, or a guy at least in conflict,
But the casting guys could have maybe, I don't know, gone with someone who could act. But he looks fine, except for because it's the 80s.
The hair.
He's got the biggest hair. He's
got
this big feathered do.
The hair is so distracting.
You're really happy when finally the hat goes on because you're like, oh, thank God for getting some of that back. Yeah. I will say that again, parts of this movie are beautifully done, at least beautifully shot. The shot, which they do a couple of times because it's so good, they bring it back at the end. But just of Lone Ranger and Tonto riding their horses side by side, and you're like, that is the characters. It's gorgeous.
They capture.
And I do think that silhouetted fight scene between just the punching between Butch Cavendish and Lone Ranger at the end, when it's just like, that was really well done. It actually looked a little bit like I think he stole that from Raiders. But
I don't think he could have, because this came out. This came out before Raiders. Yeah.
Oh no, you're right. Okay, but no, it is very.
This guy off.
I mean, they came out. They came out within months of each other, so that would have been.
Yeah.
But it is beautifully framed, and it has a real visceral feel, and it's good.
Yeah.
So there are parts, and
they went out to
great. He stands there in that suit, and every time he pulls the guns out, I'm like,
the shooting scenes are great. Like when he's just shooting targets and stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's really terrific to watch.
By the way, if you're doing a Lone Ranger movie, you get one William Tell overture, and then maybe at the end as well.
Yeah.
But this thing was so desperate to pump life. This movie's so flat. It's flat.
I don't know.
And it doesn't help that you have Merle Haggard showing up.
John Barry score that's lifeless, which is astounding to me.
Because he's John Barry. Yeah.
He's one of the great action film score guys.
He came up with a theme that's okay. Yeah. But I think he only came up with a theme, and then they just said, we'll just keep reusing it over and over again. And that's all they do. And then you have Merle Haggard that John last night was saying, like, I just didn't reckon on how much of that is
I
there.
remembered it was there, but I thought it was sort of like bookend.
A lot, but then I watched it last night. I was like going, holy hell,
it's
they are
the whole.
that.
movie.
It's rhyming
right.
To take
so Merle Haggard doesn't read it particularly well because they're basically giving him Dr. Seuss rhymes.
Yeah.
Now Cavendish and his boys were running, like that sort of thing.
Yeah. And treating people like toys.
Yeah.
Oh God, how much more do I have to do?
Yeah. No.
57 pages.
Well, that's the thing about it. It's lame. It's so lame. And if I'm a kid going to this, I'm gonna be rolling my eyes. It's not fun.
Well,
you're like, especially you're a savvy '80s kid.
Brendan and I went to see this. Brendan, you remember seeing this?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I watched it twice in the theater.
Yeah. So that's
because it was a Lone Ranger movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
And,
of course. Yeah.
Full stop.
John, we haven't mentioned this at all, but it truly had one of the great teaser posters.
It is a killer
poster.
It is a killer
poster. I've never seen. It like predates the Batman thing of isolating the single image.
Oh
yeah.
In a way, the way that the light glints off the bullet.
No, the poster makes a lot of sense. Like the movie, they both the poster and the movie itself. They do nail, as you're saying, Brendan, the iconography. They know the vibe of what it should look like, but they have nothing beyond that.
This is really paced awfully. It's
horribly paced.
Yeah, horribly.
Paced. And that's the thing is say what you will about Roger Corman, but Roger Corman shoots the poster. They should have made this poster and then shot the movie with every day looking at that effing poster and going, "Is this that? Yeah. It's not that. We need this."
Oh my God! It's an hour in and he still hasn't put on the mask.
Well,
from his brother's vest.
I love.
And that's all that's in the poster is him in the mask.
Now,
why haven't we put him in the mask yet?
Once again because like we're talking about, this is a multimedia thing, and like all of this stuff, comic books and things like that, things snowball. But in my memory, the bullets were made from the badges of the Dead Rangers. Is that a thing that comes in much that must be much later?
That's another.
That might be because
because I love
little details that have changed, and there's been a comic book property from a lot of.
I was gonna say like
Tops and
the Dynamite I thought was fantastic. Dynamite's Lone Ranger comic I thought was really good, and that was before the Disney movie, and I remember seeing the Armie Hammer one going, why don't they just fucking make that comic book? That would make a killer movie. It grounds it and makes it grittier, but still comic book.
It tweaks some stuff.
But I think that's where I'm getting
Dan's widow hooks up with Tonto, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I'm getting that. I think it's in that comic then that the thing of
Ladies Man Tonto, you mean?
He melts down the badges and makes the bullets, which I thought was such a cool idea.
Could do, and that would last one fight. So the radio show and the movie actually didn't do this at any point, but the radio show, the Reed family, they had found a silver one.
Yeah.
So and the original origin did not have Tonto and John Reed knowing each other as kids.
Yeah, which later,
I think some of the novels or something later.
This movie didn't invent this, but I don't love that idea. I don't love that idea. I don't love that idea.
I like it okay because it did give a good reason of he, as a kid, was in Texas and then gets sent back east to become a lawyer.
Okay.
And in the traditional story, it's Boston, not Detroit. I think they did the Detroit and called the girlfriend Stryker as all like, wink to...
That was for you, Brendan. I mean, that was for nerds like you who know that stuff,
Except
right?
for I was like, no, I'm sorry. Did he not go to law school?
Yeah. No, but the thing is, okay, yes, for John Reed as a character, I think that's fine. I like the idea that Tonto just saves this guy because he's a heroic, altruistic guy, not because he recognizes him as his Kemosabe.
Yeah,
and so that's why I don't like that.
Yeah, and if you read, Brendan, have you read the Isabella Allende Zorro novel?
So good.
Great book.
Great book.
But she makes a point of having Don Diego de la Vega kind of grow up with Bernardo the Mute, the Indian Mute.
Yeah.
So
it's less like older guy, younger guy, parental thing, and it's more they were literally brothers, pals.
Yeah. And so I think she may have.
I mean, people tweet. I mean,
people...
she added mysticism to the Zorro story that was never there, and it's now kind of like the new Zorro show uses that.
Well, the new Zorro show borrows a lot from that novel. I mean,
it does.
Yeah, which is fine.
It's okay.
It's really good.
The new Zorro show.
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon.
And it's a Spanish production.
It's very good. It's very good.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has an English dub. Don't do that.
Don't watch the English dub. Watch it in Spanish.
Watch the original with the subtitles.
It's really good.
It's good, except for he doesn't have a mustache.
No, anyway, okay, that's fine though.
Zorro has a mustache.
It's fine.
It has. If you ever put a mustache on the Lone Ranger, I'm walking. I'm leaving the theater.
I would love if they moved Zorro's mustache.
On Superman's cape, do you?
Yeah.
No, you don't.
You don't spit in the wind.
Yeah.
You don't
pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with
Jim, for Christ's sake.
Okay, so to your point about where we were talking about the idea
Jim?
of about Jim. Let's talk about Jim now. No, but the thing about we talked about what you're saying is you like that for John Reed grew up in Texas. Here's one of the biggest problems with this movie, and there are so many, like I say, so many problems. But who is John Reed as a character? He has.
I know.
He is just. He is already one of my biggest problems is he is already the Lone Ranger when the movie starts. Basically, he is already like Mr. Just like he has no arc as a character, which is terrible for an origin story. He is already like, I believe in justice, damn it, and you're just like, but
he was taught that by his Indian mentor. So
right, but it's like, but if you play him more as. Instead of the guy, a very simple thing to give him an arc would be instead of the guy who's like, get me out there, damn it, Dan. If he was more of like, I'm a lawyer, all right? I don't pick up a gun. It's like, do something to give him something that makes the transition to the Lone Ranger feel like he's becoming someone.
To do this, and in this case, it's not about his character; it's about his skills. And this movie tries to do that, and it does it in a montage, which is just basically like, "Are you sure your gun is low?" It's like, "Do I need to bring the target closer?" So the whole idea is like, "Oh, I'm really not so good with this yet." Now I am.
You don't.
Oh, thanks, montage.
You don't feel that. You know what I mean? It's like you recognize that, but
if you're gonna play John Reed and conceive of the character this way, then he needs to be more of a Jimmy Stewart and the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
That's a good idea.
If he came back and Dan was actually going like, well, it's a good thing I didn't want you to end up having the same life, and I'm glad you're a lawyer, but still make fun of him for being like a prissy city boy. And you could even do a thing if you were going to include, because they really don't in this movie do anything with he's a master disguise, that kind of thing, except for the Padres.
which is totally pointless.
It's like, I heard you did plays. Were you doing plays over there in Harvard or whatever? Like,
did they make you dress up in ballet tights?
It's like, no.
That's one of the things that's very.
Introduce that, so that's there when he puts on disguises. You can even have Tonto going like, "Wow, you do look like an old prospector." And he's like going,
"You should have been the old prospector at some point." But
and you could have like a throw like the brother going, "Well, who are you playing, Romeo?" And then you just have him go, I was the nurse. I was.
What? Robin, are you pitching jokes for this movie? Humor?
Because literally, you watch these things.
Humor?
If they don't,
Comedy?
if they don't
and that's not
on something that would work.
Yeah.
Then I'm constantly thinking, what would make this work? You know what would be great?
Throughout this entire movie, because there are moments where it's brushing up, especially visually, against what I want, and they are doing the beats of the story, I'm sitting there, again, like I said, I love the origin, but I keep going, that could be trimmed. This could be cut down. Get to the Lone Ranger part.
Right.
Build Butch's storyline through the whole thing.
The whole sequence of them in the stagecoach. Obviously aping John Ford's
completely.
No, wait, what is this movie you speak of? No.
Well, you've
is that a Western of some sort?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course I've seen
the
Stage.
Best Picture Oscar.
Yeah. No, it's a masterpiece.
Few Westerns ever too.
No. I wrote this is very nerdy, of course, of me, as if there's not already on the show. When I was in film school, I wrote a whole essay about how the myth of John Wayne is invented in that one push-in shot on the Ringo Kid.
Yeah,
I was just like, that is the birth of a movie star. Yeah, right. Like,
there you go, right there.
Yeah, no, it's just like but and then I also wrote one about how Clinton Spilsbury is a great untapped movie star. No, well, I think it's interesting. All this stuff we're talking about is when you talk about pacing. It's not just, it's like pacing and structure and just like weird choices because it, as an origin story, doesn't do a lot of, it's so interesting. Like him putting on the mask doesn't have a lot of weight to it. He does it late in the movie, but it doesn't feel grand. Like, we've built to the moment now of I'm becoming the Lone Ranger.
That because everything is flat. It's the performances as well. And Michael Horse, who's a fine Tonto.
We haven't really talked about Tonto.
He's good enough.
Well, he's very earnest.
For this movie,
he's very
earnest.
And I think if you go ahead.
Smile at Kimosabe occasionally. But the thing is that this is his first acting thing too. And he'll go on to Twin Peaks, and he's fine as Deputy Hawk.
Love Hawk.
But the thing is,
he's a tracker. He's a tracker, Agent Cooper. He's a tracker.
Yeah.
But here, it all lies so very flat that this should be a thing. They don't really do much with the whole idea, other than like in a voiceover, or where he's like going, they have to believe that they were all killed. So, and him making the mask out of his brother's vest, which is kind of like, that's iconic and awesome.
Huge.
That's not here. Here he's just standing at the graves and turns around and he's got the mask on as if like, well, I had to, right? Come on, guys.
It doesn't do the thing that so many origin stories do it wouldn't have been cliched in 81, but like, give me a proto version of the costume or something or some idea. It's like he has nothing, and then the costume arrives fully formed, and you're like, where the fuck did this come from?
There's nothing that.
What inspires him to think he needs to wear a mask even?
The reason Tonto existed, because he doesn't start off in the radio show, he shows up 11 episodes in.
He's got to talk to somebody.
He was created is he needed someone to talk to. That's exactly it.
Yep.
And this movie decides that
was kind of Robin too, right?
Is like they knew each other's kids. Done. So they don't really need to discuss what the mission is, why he wants to do any of this, and you need a little bit of that. You need him to kind of go, this isn't your fight. You don't have to join me.
Yeah.
It's like thank you for my life, and we'll always be friends, but I have to do this alone. And then Tonto going, no, you're my brother, and we do this together.
Yeah,
you need things like that just to bolster this.
Kimosabe or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, they do that. It's like trusted friend, and Merle Haggard tells us that or whatever.
He's
just fuck off.
Well, that's another problem. Is the movie is also the script is very lazy because it relies a lot on. Now, what you got to know about what Tonto was up to was just get out of here.
Voiceover narrator. It's like, why don't you go talk about what the Duke boys are up to? He's like going, well, no, someone already has that.
Yeah. I tried, man. I call him every week going, you still using that guy? Okay, fine.
He's wailing okay.
Because
if he shows up and he's drunk, you give me a call.
I'm just saying, I called him the other day and he had the sniffles. It could be bad. So I'm just saying, maybe we get me in right away.
I called him the other day and he was mocking me on the phone. He just kept going, the man in the mask. I was like, stop.
Oh, yeah. Do you think he was like, I guess I got the better narrating gig, Merle. Son of a bitch.
About Boss Hogg.
Son of a bitch.
They could have done a whole thing where, John Reed knows that he can't show up alive in order to get to the bottom of this. And so he wears a disguise.
Yeah.
And then he realizes nobody really respects or fears the old prospect. And that's when Tonto says, if you wear the mask. And
yeah.
It's like, here's the thing is They will fear you because they think that you're a bandit or something like that. And when they realize you're actually after them on the side of good.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason the Lone Ranger decided he had to wear a mask after taking care of Cavendish.
Right.
It's interesting. Let's get into that. But anyway, because after that's done, it's like, well, the best scene in this movie to me, besides the fact that I do love seeing young Christopher Lloyd, very commanding, and he's got the cool outfit.
And speaking softly, but with import. It's really.
But my favorite scene in this movie is the first thing he does as a Lone Ranger, where he confronts the Judas guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that has it has a purpose, and it is the test of, is he just going to get revenge? And if Clint Spilsbury sells anything in this movie, and he sells almost nothing, but there's a sort of tenseness just in his body language where he's just like going, I know what happened there.
Yeah.
And I want to hear you say it. And it's just like his hands are next to his guns, and you're like going, ooh. So that's the best scene. And then I go, but that's weak sauce, because the movie should be
that's the most Batman-y kind of scene too, right? Because the guy is even scared, and he's like, "What?" Yeah. Well, and he's going, but the guy is
heavy, Clinton. No, I like it.
Swear to me. I would love it if we get the unaltered track, and that's what he was doing, a Batman voice the whole movie. Tonto.
Brian Scap.
Yeah, and I will.
know you took money for that job.
No, but I like the guy being like,
President Grant, I'm here to save you.
Yeah, I do like but I like that the guy's like, what? Why are you wearing that mask? Like, it adds to that thing about like, yeah, it's like weird that a guy just walked in here with like a whole outfit, you know? Like, this is weird.
Even though it's another fairly effective scene, it was part of the trailer, but the whole thing where I have to say, it's for the first outing, it then makes no logical sense that Lone Ranger just walks out and he's fine, but Tonto, who was waiting outside, gets instantly caught, and it's just so they can do this. Well, we're gonna hang the guy scene.
Yeah.
But the whole thing that was in the trailer was him rescuing Tonto from the noose with the shooting of the thing, and him
classic,
and riding off.
Yeah.
And it's classic, but I do love the whole idea of broad daylight, guy in a black mask riding up, and the people just sort of part. And there's like he saves the Native American guy, rides off, and no one chases.
It's always weird. It's always it's like,
well, I guess he's just gone.
It's like when you see Batman in the daylight, or
fast, Brendan, and they can tell because he's silver and he can run real fast.
He's also very well camouflaged.
Let's can we talk about the movie trying to make the iconography of silver, and just it's another thing where it's like, I see what you're doing, but it's not working. Yeah. The slow motion taming of silver that I went on for like
2 years that you'll never get back watching that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like 20 minutes of the movie.
There are moments of that work, but trim that down. That's 2 minutes tops.
Brennan, for the later movie, get ready for more silver antics.
So many antics. So many antics.
When he throws him into the pond.
But the other thing that I was once again reading the thoughts of some of the producers on this, talking about going, well, you know, we were different than the old show. We really want to treat Tonto as his equal in this. I'm like, yeah, but they don't really. I mean, he's there. He's his equal in as much as he's always like riding alongside him. But Tonto doesn't really do much.
Yeah,
he doesn't add. He doesn't add much. He doesn't have a lot. He doesn't like come up with ideas.
There's no partnership planning. There's none of that where it's like, I'll go and you do the and
that's one thing that the Dynamite books get so great is they make Tonto so badass. And like so bad, constantly sarcastically talking to the Lone Ranger about shit.
Well, it's another missed opportunity.
That I find when they do that, it's reactionary. It's not that it's bad, but it is just like, let's set things straight.
But it's so interesting.
Sadly, it's what the Green Hornet movie did, which was basically Seth Rogen going, oh, our twist is that really Britt Reed is hapless. and not that great, and Kato is amazing and basically is the hero.
I will say though that's kind of true in the other stuff. They just don't call it out. He's not hapless, but Kato is the one who kicks most ass.
That's only because Bruce Lee
cast
him for the TV show.
Yeah.
In the radio show, it is a lead hero with a very capable sidekick, but then you get Van Johnson and you get Bruce Lee, and who's going to be the badass there?
Van Johnson, obviously. All the Van Johnson action movies that came out after that.
Wait, are you saying Van Johnson? I don't think that's his name.
Van Williams. Van Williams is who
Van
you mean.
Williams,
Yes.
Van Johnson.
Yeah, Van Johnson.
The MGM.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That guy
who could barely hide his.
Hey, that guy also kicked ass, though, is all I know.
He also starred with Bruce Lee.
But no, what I was going to say about the missed opportunity of, like, also, like...
Dance of the Dragon.
When you talk about there's no partnership here, the missed opportunity of Tonto for me in this, and in any Lone Ranger story is, he has a totally different background and skill set, so, like, there would be things he would know or be able to do that the Lone Ranger couldn't. That makes the Lone Ranger hapless, but just like, he might know the land, and that's the thing where you just go
I'm not arguing that he should not be made an incredibly capable guy,
but I'm just saying, like, it's
equal to Lone Ranger. It's just that modern writers, in order to correct what I think was past imbalances, often will do that thing. Tonto now,
but what's funny is
he's mocking John Reed, and it's like, Ranger, you're so smart.
But that's the thing that's
like,
funny about. That's the thing that's funny about, like I said, the producers' comments on this, because they claim that's what they're doing here, and I'm like, I don't see any evidence of you writing wrong. You actually have a capable
thing. They probably had planned to have a lot more conversations between Tonto and Lone Ranger, and then they realized what they had with
Spilsbury. Because I do think that's
the young Michael Horse is probably not. I mean, the lines he delivers here, they're pretty stiff. Now, he's not ADR. I mean, he's not replaced.
But I do think it's a thing where, number one, Tonto, of course, should be more stoic. But I also think it's a thing where maybe if he had someone a little livelier, that could have improved him. Because we know Horse eventually is able to craft some better performances going forward, because he still does act and stuff, unlike Mr. Spilsbury. But I think that's a thing where it's like, you just have two total stiffs. So
that's it.
If you had
realized those scenes, is like, are we going to have them at the campfire talking? It's like, we're going to lose the audience.
I remember Nimoy talking about when he worked with Jeff Hunter on the pilot for Star Trek, right? He goes, I didn't know where to play Spock. It's only when Shatner came in as the total live wire of high energy that he was like, great, he goes high, I go low. If you had that kind of balance here, you needed, I mean, actually, not literally William Shatner, but somebody in that vein who knows when to be explosive and heroic.
Well, right, and that's.
I actually think Lone Ranger should have some intensity. You can be an earnest, good guy hero.
Yeah,
but still, the whole thing.
Talk about
my
Lone Ranger Zorro short story.
Yeah.
I got into that because he, like a lot of classic heroes, like Bruce Wayne. His origin is based in loss and pain, and so there's an intensity that's not healthy. It's like you can't defeat evil, you never will. But if your entire life is devoted to that, there's something very interesting going on in your head. And maybe he never shoots to kill, but I can't imagine he has too much of a sense of humor. So intensity could be Lone Ranger. Tonto could be the humanizing person next to him going like,
I was going to say,
easy, John, calm down.
There's another character arc. If in that moment when he's confronting that turncoat guy, if he really does come up to the line of nearly killing him, and maybe Tonto is the one who backs him off. If you did have him go, this is a mission of vengeance, and then become, because we've seen that's a classic vigilante thing too, is like, what are you doing out here? Are you just out here to hurt people?
This should have been about him finding where his line is, and they're trying to do that a little bit, because when he takes Cavendish down, he does not he puts the gun to his head, and but he's not going.
And Cavendish is screaming, "Do it!" That's a great Christopher Lloyd bit there. I love that.
Christopher Lloyd, MVP of this movie. Without question.
And I'll also throw in Jason Robards.
I'll throw in Jason Robards, who knows what movie he's in and is calculating. Because Robards, just
Jason
a guy
Robards
never bad.
Is the Alan Rickman of this?
Yes,
where it's like I want to be in the movie he's in. Because Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, I want to be in the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves that Alan Rickman's in because that's the fun one. I don't want to hang. I know he worships. I'm sorry, John worships.
I love Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Love Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Well,
hot take.
John,
The take is scalding over here.
I like me Alan Rickman, and I have no problem with Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio.
The end.
Really?
Not even our father.
Not even Morgan? You're not even going to give Morgan in that? Morgan's great in it.
Great. Morgan's always great. But it's like,
Connery?
why do we have a Moore character in the Robin Hood story?
Oh,
just because we've got Morgan Freeman.
And he's great.
Have a Moorish merry man.
He's great in it. All right. We'll have that. There will be a Robin Hood season of IP Squad. I don't, believe it or not, I don't think Brendan will be on that, maybe, if only because that episode would get nasty.
Oh boy, would it. Well, I'm not a fan of that, but I could talk about Errol Flynn all day.
I love the Errol Flynn version too.
Yeah.
You don't. I don't need to pick. But no. So yeah, this movie just doesn't work. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of anything else.
No, I think we've gotten to that place.
Yeah.
I will say the Clinton Spilsbury of it is also why you don't get anything more with him and the young woman.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, they were just like, there's nothing here. There's nothing
That's it.
here.
I don't really get a sense of how good or bad she is because, once again, she's supposed to be playing.
Was almost Wilma Deering. I looked that up.
Okay. I mean,
she lost out to Erin Gray, but she was the one that almost was
they brought her in a later episode as a different military person.
Just like, man, she was great. Let's bring her in. But she died sadly young.
Yeah, I was gonna say because her career kind of just stops. But yeah, she died. That's
as 45 or something.
Oh God, that's real tragic.
So she didn't believe in hospitals or.
Yeah. Oh, that's even sadder. That's even sadder.
Yeah.
Yeesh. Yikes. But no, like I said, that's why, because we know Spilsbury, it is tough, and that's why people like Michael Horse, who I know is a good actor, although Michael Horse has my favorite comment, who seemed to have the exact opposite attitude of Spilsbury, and I think probably the reason he kept working. If you read his quotes from the time, he goes, I've never acted before. This could be a disaster, and if it is, I'll just go back home and fish.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love you, Michael Horse. That's so great. He goes like, he once again he didn't come in going, this is gonna make me a star. He goes like, I'll fucking try, man. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
That makes me sad about this character is that he doesn't seem to be a character that's hard to get right.
No, and he's pretty simple, right? Like
you get a movie like this. Since we're talking about IP, the IP is strong, is solid. I think. Maybe not universal, maybe not a character that today's audiences are dying to see, but I will say movies like this make studios believe it's the character's fault. And I sit there going like, well, that's the wrong message. It made Lone Ranger radioactive for years. Then there was the failed TV thing where we're rethinking it for the CW generation. Horrible.
Really
bad. And then you get the big budget movie finally, but decades later.
And the problem there is
they screwed up.
Well, they screwed up, but also I feel like even a good Lone Ranger movie shouldn't cost $200 million. You know what I mean?
No,
like that's
really shouldn't.
It's the John Carter thing. Which we'll also talk about later.
They have a bunch of trains dueling each other, so that's.
It's great, but it is one of those things where it's like, boy, you guys went. You were really surprised that the Lone Ranger didn't like buoy this whole studio. Like, make me you could make a really good $60 million Lone Ranger movie that's fun and full of adventure.
Is a western with a guy in a mask.
I mean, that's the thing.
It doesn't need explosions.
You know who I want to direct a Lone Ranger movie, who I think would do an amazing job of it now? James Mangold. Mangold would crush the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, I was thinking Martin Campbell, but
Martin Campbell also, because Mask of Zorro,
amazing. Just amazing film, and
but
Mangold, along those lines,
Mangold's
Mangold gets old-fashioned
Mangold's 310 to Yuma, one of my favorite westerns of the modern era. So good.
My teenager liked it a lot. I just kept saying, you got to see the original, buddy.
The original's great too. The original's great
what
too.
What about your son? You always talk about this teenager of yours, and you should let him loose.
Yeah,
Robin.
His parents are worried.
But what did your son think about it?
My non-binary teenager.
Yeah.
Who does not say. I'm trying to respect their pronouns.
Yeah.
Yes. As you should.
The tallest Jones in the world. They really loved 310 to Yuma with Bale and Crow.
Agreed.
And they are tired of hearing me say yes, but imagine it tighter and shorter.
Oh,
it's really good.
It is really good. I love the original, but I love the Mangold movie.
Glenn Ford, like you've never seen Glenn Ford before. It's really great. I love it a lot.
Yeah. I think actually we're going to be doing that for, once again, I keep teasing future seasons. We're going to be doing a whole season about remakes at some point. And I think one of the ones we'll be talking about is 310 to Yuma and the talk about both of them. So stay tuned for that in 8 years.
I'm not saying the remake's bad. I think the remake's really good. And a great example of how James Mangold gets it. You watch that and Ford versus Ferrari and Logan.
No.
And you're seeing a guy, and the Indiana Jones movie,
Dial of Destiny.
You're seeing a guy who understands how to make a movie like few modern directors really understand.
Well,
he's somebody that really understands.
Brendan and I talk about this a lot. And he's always the guy I think of for this. When you and I were talking a while back, Brendan, about who are like the modern Michael Curtiz. The people who can just jump genres and know how to make a Howard Hawks. And I think Mangold is that in today. But I think he doesn't get the credit because that's underappreciated today. Like the idea of like, you start to go, well, he directed that, and he also did Walk the Line and Copland, and and you're like, oh wow, and he also did Kate and Leopold. It's like the guy can do rom-coms, he can do action movies, he can do dramas. Anyway, he has nothing to do with the loan. Norman Jewison was like that.
Yeah. You guys went into Fantasyland about, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
Is someone good doing a Lone Ranger movie?
Well, and actually, I
agree.
That
would be very cool.
When we get there, I don't think Gore Verbinski's a bad choice for the Lone Ranger, and there are parts.
I agree with you.
He gets a lot of the big moments really right in that thing. I think there's a lot of studio problems on that thing.
And a lot of
do whatever Johnny's weird idea.
The depth thing is a massive problem because actually, regardless of how problematic he is now, I think Armie Hammer's not a bad Lone Ranger. All right, but we'll.
John, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
I'll bring up why I think The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is possibly the best movie Guy Ritchie ever made. So
I'm right there with you on that. Anyway, Legend of Lone Ranger, though, just like it's a frustrating sit for me because
John, you got any of those high and lows? Those high and lows.
I do have highs and lows on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, because you want to make sure we get to
Let's get to the highs and lows.
The psychopaths who like this movie.
I was my partner, who's usually by the book and would say this. I'm jumping the gun a little bit because I'm a rebel and I break the rules.
All right, let's start with we'll start with a low because that's I always start with sort of where we are on the movie and then we'll So this comes to us from Jason Lee Smith 6.
Wow. He's the 6th of this line.
He's the sixth Jason Lee Smith. And the review is titled "Believe the Hype." Finally, a movie everyone can agree on. It was horrible. This movie was so bad that the only way the producer could get any kind of buzz going about it was by legally barring Clayton Moore from dressing as the Lone Ranger when he went to visit sick kids in the hospital. We didn't talk about that. That was a lot of the bad press coming into this.
Yeah. I was getting there. Yeah, that was one of the ways they shot themselves in the foot. If you want to engender any kind of goodwill, you don't crap on the guy who basically is that character for everybody.
And he could have played the
embraced
uncle who was the newspaper guy easy.
The fact that there's no cameo is upsetting. I mean, because
the uncle who's the paper guy is the dude who replaced Clayton Moore for a year when the Lone Ranger.
That's right. That's right.
One season. That's right.
Man,
because he was in a contract dispute.
Clayton Moore, that guy, so good, and just shit on here. Back in the day, they tried to screw him out of money. And then yes, spent a lot of his later years dressing as the Lone Ranger and visiting kids in the hospital. What a fucking monster, am I right?
That's right. Yeah, terrible.
But
how's that going to affect the box office of your movie?
Yeah,
how dare he do that?
That was a lot. Well, I love the it's in the Wikipedia. They talk about the producer of this movie asked Clayton Moore, "Could you stop doing that?" And he goes, "No, I'm not going to stop doing that." And then they sued him. It's like, well, we tried to be reasonable and get you to stop visiting children.
God.
What I love though is that even when he was barred from doing it, he still basically did it. He just sort of he put on sunglasses. He put on the sunglasses. And
then he got a Foster Grants commercial. Which was
dude,
money he probably wasn't expecting.
That guy, man, I love that guy. All right, so the movie is so bad it destroyed the directing career of William A. Fraker. Yes, he did never direct a film again. He did direct some TV. The movie is so bad that Clinton Spilsbury, the Lone Ranger, never landed another role, his acting apparently being so inept that his voice was dubbed over with that of another actor. Christopher Lloyd managed to survive this train wreck with his career intact. Michael Horse found his way into David Lynch's Twin Peaks, so it didn't destroy everyone it touched, but I'm sure it was a near thing. As for the movie itself, the story is dull, the pacing is slow, and the acting is wooden. So all in all, not that far from the 2013 version with Johnny Depp. Once again, that movie has problems, but not the same ones.
I can think of a bigger problems with that movie.
Oh yeah, it's not even the kind of bad movie which is fun to watch. It is just super dull. If you're tempted, as I was, to watch it just to see if it is as bad as everyone says, resist the urge. It's just that bad. I agree. It is also not spectacularly bad. Like I said, what I kept thinking is it's frustrating. I spent the whole movie going, what do you... especially if you like the character and the mythos of this, you are just going, why are you doing it like that? That's just... I hate... That to me is more infuriating than if it had just been like, what is this?
It's just a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
You can hear the gears not meshing.
Okay.
They're just not catching.
Let's go to a high review here. And Brendan, I think this person would describe themselves as being a like mind with you.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think because this comes to us from Cflan 1525.
That's his online name.
I love when I have to.
Did you write this?
This isn't a video podcast, so people didn't see me lean into, because when you get all those L's and ones and stuff, I'm like, C-flan. Okay. I had to lean into the screen to be like, what am I looking at here? Okay. The review is titled, "Actually Does Justice to the Original Legend." Just goes to show you, the professional critics rarely know what is really in the mind and heart of the average moviegoer. I have been a fan of the original Lone Ranger all my life, and am old enough to have heard the wonderful baritone voice of the radio Lone Ranger, the great Brace Beamer. Then, when the Lone Ranger premiered on TV, I was just old enough to understand the show. And I was as hooked on that show as I would later be with the original Mickey Mouse Club, Annette Funicello! ! This guy's really reliving his past.
Jesus God.
An American Bandstand.
I remember grape knee high corner store waiting for the new issue of Jerry Lewis comic to come.
I did, yeah. I had just ordered an egg cream, and I was, So I have been, and I have always been a devoted fan. Even now, I watch reruns of the original series every morning. Still a great show.
I salute my Trump flag.
He's doing this in the rest home.
Still waiting on the milkman to show up, and he hasn't shown up for 28 years.
Still a great,
right there, buddy.
What I love is this is about the movie, but I like that he goes, still a great show. Only one Lone Ranger for me. The great Clayton Moore and only one Tonto, Jay Silverheels. They
only
are...
one Howdy Doody.
Yeah, none of this woke modern Howdy Doody, am I right? Oh, jeez. Okay, having said all that, now I'll talk about the movie. This is a great movie. Just watched it for the first time in a long time on TV, and I love this guy is clearly because he's talking about reruns, watched it on TV. This guy has not entered the streaming generation. This review was written in 2019, so
He did voice to text, I guess.
I know. I'm surprised he logged into. He made an IMDb account.
I had my great grandson log into this newfangled thing for me because I felt like people needed to know.
Having said all that,
brought me some milk.
So just
28 years is too long to go without milk.
That's so much dry cereal.
Just watched it for the first time in a long time on TV, and it is one of the best scripts to come along yet, bar none, to tackle this story. Wow. Nice development of the characters and the legend in the background. The casting in this was amazing. All the characters and actors were terrific. Christopher Lloyd as Cavendish was an inspiration. Once again, I wish that's there. Awesome.
Future Cavendishes.
This is okay. Robin, I think you'll appreciate this because being a fan of old westerns. I don't know where he's coming from on this. Awesome Lone Ranger and Tonto. Tonto reminds me of Rick Nelson a little as he appeared in Rio Bravo.
Oh my God!
What is he? What
the fuck?
I don't.
Wow.
I just watched. Here's
my recommendation of this reviewer.
Yeah.
Seek help.
Because I will say I fairly recently watched Rio Bravo again. Because they put out a 4K of it that's pretty nice. I don't see it.
Pillsbury is no Tom Mix, but he's got a certain something.
Let's see. Tonto reminds me as he appeared, and the oh god, and
he's got a William Boyd-ish.
Oh, here we go. Here's where the guy really. And the Ranger's horse Silver here is as beautiful and pure white as the original Amazing Silver. I laughed when he threw the Ranger into the water. That was a wonderful touch. Wow. I usually start my morning off with 2 AM episodes, half hours each with minimal interruptions, of the original. I agree with one other critic here. Even at my age, I still get that thrill when I hear the strains of the William Tell Overture. It means only one thing to me. When in the movie, the new Lone Ranger...
McCormick is on. Hardcastle and McCormick is on, I believe.
It's time for the Barnaby Jones rerun. Yeah.
Start my day, couple episodes of Lone Ranger. Take a nap.
Yeah.
Then it's a couple episodes of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet.
Yeah.
Take a nap.
This guy permanently has his TV on Me TV, if you guys know the station. Yeah. It's what my dad's watching. I agree. Let's see. I agree. Even if it means only one thing. When in the movie, the new Lone Ranger gets his persona, and they play the trumpeting sounds of the overture, I got that thrill and goosebumps. That's when I knew the movie was going to be great, and it was. It was.
EKG.
The rest of the script didn't disappoint either. It is definitely a keeper.
I'm trapped in the coal chute.
Someone
could come find me.
Okay, just like in the remake of Star Trek, when at the end of the movie they play the old Star Trek theme, it means the cast and movie have earned the right to use the original theme song.
Wait, what?
He just likes when they play the old music he remembers.
Well, yeah, sure.
By the way, I'm realizing my voice for him is just becoming Gary Marshall. Anyone who has a chance to view it should absolutely do so. It really does do justice to the original legend. Clayton Moore was devoted to his character all his life. He would have been proud.
Is this review?
He would have. It's almost. This is the last paragraph. He
We're
would
in
have
hour
been.
3 of the review.
He would have been proud of this movie adaptation of his series. I will always be grateful for his having given me such a wonderful hero in my childhood. Kids nowadays could use a few like him. The character of the Lone Ranger is a role model for all time.
Absolutely.
Jesus God.
No, I agree with that. The character of the Lone Ranger is great. He's kind of missing from this movie for most of it. So.
Yeah, and how he thought that Clayton Moore would be proud if he were alive to see.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have
fucked
seen this
over by the
movie with
producers.
Clayton Moore in the theater.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
because
yeah,
I would love hearing him grind his teeth.
I was just gonna say it's like, do you know anything about this movie and Clayton Moore, because they don't go together so well?
You know, as the Lone Ranger, I've sworn never to shoot and to kill, but I think I could kill this projector.
Yeah.
I think I can bend that oath.
Sad news today, as beloved actor Clayton Moore took fire at a screen and started trying to shoot an image of Clinton Spilsbury.
Well,
Brentwood
this one's not
multiplex.
worth watching.
No,
Sorry,
it's a miss. I was surprised it was streaming anywhere. I watched it on Peacock. I couldn't believe. I just thought this was pretty much.
Yeah, it was streaming for free on Peacock and Amazon Prime, and we're telling you it's free, but avoid it.
It's because it's not worth your time.
Free,
Even
it's
at
not worth the money.
and what is it? It's like 95 minutes. It's still not worth your time, folks. Even at that. Well, I think things are gonna get a little better next week, and also things are gonna get a little more adult.
What?
Things are gonna get mature when we go to 1982 and meet Conan the Barbarian.
Oh my God!
Yes.
Can I sing the haunting theme?
Oh.
Conan, Conan, he's a barbarian. Conan, Conan, he is the guy.
That's so weird. That's not on the soundtrack for it that I have, but that's,
Basil Polidorus, he taught me the original theme.
God damn, I do love Conan the Barbarian. Very excited because I bought it a while and I haven't watched it until I'm going to watch it for the new Arrow Video 4K of it.
You got the 4K?
I got the Arrow Video 4K of it, so I'm excited to get into watch that and then all the special features. I'm going to have to bring some audio clips because, of course, the commentary track for the movie is also very famous. And Arnold's. I don't know if you guys have heard any selections from Arnold and. Oh, then you fellas will be in for a treat next week when I play you some selections from that.
I just want to hear stories about Sandahl Bergman.
Oh, believe me, John Milius had a lot to say about Sandahl Bergman on that connection.
Wow.
Week, I will be referred to as Thulsa Jones. So,
yeah, dude, I love Conan the Barbarian. And actually, the next 2 weeks, because of this, we will be doing both Conan movies back to back. We'll be doing Conan the Destroyer. We'll be doing Conan and the Barbarian, and then the next week Conan the Destroyer.
So a peek and
Conan the Destroyer is going to be more of a what happened.
Instant fall off. Yeah.
What happened, you guys?
And it's a shame because Richard Fleischer, I like that guy a lot, and I just think he got hit over the head with
there's some good stuff, and I'm gonna go in with eyes open as much as I can, but there are some key mistakes. But of course, if you want more content from this and all the shows on the Punch Up Entertainment Network, including the three of us talking about the filmography of one Vincent Price, you can head over to our Patreon page. Delightful, yes. I was never in one of these pulp pictures, but
They said that Vincent, your performance will be cheap enough as it is.
I said, who's this Spilsbury character? I could be the Lone Ranger.
Yes, truly.
But you can head over to our Patreon page, which is patreon.podbean.com/punchup for cool exclusive bonus content, as well as help out all the shows here. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of the IP Squad. Until next week, the case file is closed.